As you may know, today was the release of the Dungeons and Dragons DLC, which finally includes the new characters as well as some new cool cosmetics with it. However, the most important part is always the balance changes that come with this patch, and many players were wondering if the post-buff Vecna was going to be strong or not. And I am here to tell you that Vecna is actually insanely strong. What they did is make his spell cooldown shorter, from 50 seconds to 38, and also speed up his movement anytime he casts a spell. Well, the end result is that Vecna feels extremely smooth to play as, and his powers, especially Mage Hand, are actually usable and to the point of being very hard to counter if you don't play it perfectly. Let's take a look at his spells and how useful they are now. First of all, let's talk about the Fly spell, which has been buffed as now you keep your collision while you're flying with it. This allows you to block survivors from trying to double back and jump pallets or windows, but I have seen that jumping the pallet back is still possible, similar to how survivors do it to Wesker. The Fly spell is an insane catch-up power, especially if you use the Fly add-ons with it, as it allows you to completely counter any hold W tactics the survivors were doing, and also allows you to use the Fly spell to search for survivors, get in a chase with them, hit them, and then you can use your power again. Fly feels like a chase spell as well as a map traversal one, and the magic item that reveals your aura is not that big of a deal compared to the other spells because you can actually counter it with blindness status effects. Next up, we have his skeleton spell, which in terms of doing damage is still mostly trash, as the only way is to either get lucky or hit a survivor performing an animation similar to Pyramid Head or Huntress. The difference is that this spell comes out so insanely fast that even if a survivor correctly counters it by crouching, you can just catch them up again. Combine this with the Aura Reveal add-on and you have a solid anti-loop spell. Now sadly, I tried to use this spell in order to snipe survivors of gens like I did in the PTB, but it seems like this is just a very niche playstyle that is reserved only for meme builds, as it's extremely easy to counter, especially with the item that reveals the skeleton's aura. But something that shocked me is that I genuinely think the Iridescent add-on for the skeletons is worse because there are less skeletons on them, as I feel they are significantly easier to dodge than compared to the default ones. So right now, Flight of the Damned is a zoning spell. Surprisingly, one of the spells that got the biggest glow up is Dispelling Sphere, as it is now significantly faster compared to the PTB, bigger and also quieter, which was a problem. I think this spell is literally perfect as is, as the only slight change I would make is for there to be no slowdown at all, and also allow Vecna to interact with stuff after casting it, since it's not a damaging or movement spell. Many times after downing a survivor, I cast this spell to a generator and then I have to wait a bit before I can pick up the downed survivor, which is admittedly annoying. And again, the survivor's magic item that allows them to see the sphere is one of the most useful ones, as it completely counters it if you play it right. And finally, the spell that changed significantly to the best is Mage Hand, which lifts pallets so fast and you get barely any slowdown that, as far as I am aware, it is almost a guaranteed hit as long as you play it right. I legit don't see a counterplay for this spell as a survivor, and I hope I get some decent survivors that could teach me what to do. One thing I do have to say is that the item that counters Mage Hand is by far the best magic item survivors have, as it lets you get another loop against Vecna since you get a 7% haste bonus, which is a significant amount, especially right now. But again, even if this item were to be buffed, Vecna can just cast Dispelling Sphere, which is bigger and faster, and disable your items for the remainder of the chase. I would not be surprised if they nerf Mage Hand soon, as this is the only spell that can be problematic for the other side. In terms of the legendary items for survivors, they are still as fun as they were before. I even got the Hand of Vecna to lead me to the hatch in a match, and if there is something Chaos Shuffle has taught me, is that I love random RNG elements in my Dead by Daylight matches. But going back to Vecna, the first day impression is that he is extremely strong. Whether this is because Vecna is actually strong, or because survivors don't know how to play against him, I don't know for sure yet. but Vecna is certainly on the upper side of power compared to the rest of the cast. I wouldn't say S tier, but A tier for sure, and by far what I like the most out of him is that his most powerful add-ons are all the uncommon yellow ones, as the green and purple add-ons are nice but they give niche effects, unlike the yellow ones which make your spells better, especially the one that reduces 4 seconds of all of your spells cooldown, making it take 34 seconds instead of 38. Pearl of Power also seems like it's a good add-on overall, as it is now easier than ever to hit a survivor with a basic attack, which would reduce the cooldown of Mage Hand. In terms of Vecna's perks, in my last video I said that there is a big chance nobody will end up using them, as they will fall to some of the worst perks in the game. I think I am going to retract that statement, because the perks in itself are not that bad. Dark Arrogance, the perk that makes vaults faster, makes them insanely fast when combined with Bamboozle. I still think by itself this perk is a downgrade compared to Superior Anatomy or Bamboozle alone, but when you put this on a killer that benefits a lot from vaulting windows, it does lead to some fun situations and fast downs. I think the downside is still way too annoying for the effects it gives you, but I don't see this perk not being used on characters like Leatherface or some other choices that benefit Bamboozle. Languid Touch is surprisingly really good. It's extremely easy to activate since you have to do nothing, and the exhaustion effect is annoying, so if you get in a chase with this perk, you basically have your exhaustion perk deactivated with absolutely no counter, which sounds insane because it is. This is a direct counter to Death Heart and potentially Lithe or even Sprint Burst if you get good timing and the correct survivor with it. The problem is that you as a killer won't know who is affected by this perk, and you won't feel the perk making any effect on the match, but as a survivor, this perk basically makes you permanently exhausted. I think this is a straight upgrade compared to Genetic Limits and Septic Touch, and I would argue it's also an upgrade compared to Blood Echo on most killers. It is, along with Mindbreaker, by far the best anti-exhaustion perk in the game, and yet I still see this perk not being used by many in the future. Weave Attunement is by far his most niche perk, and the one I don't see being picked a lot for how weird it is in design, but when it works, it is surprisingly real good. What I noticed is that it seems like it vertically is infinite, as I was able to see the aura of a survivor that was on the top part of Vecna's map even when the item they were dropped was in the dungeon. This means that if you sacrifice a survivor in the basement and the item they were holding is dropped, you have a 12-meter radius of wall hacks as a killer, which can be really good on structures like the shack or in main buildings where the basement is located in a favorable place, as long as the survivors don't have distortion, which completely counters it. Now, I did some testing on when it means dropped items, so if a survivor opens a chest and they don't pick up that item, it doesn't work. However, something I was not able to test is if Weave Attunement works when a survivor places an item back into a chest, for example their used up medkit for a new one. If it does, then Weave Attunement is potentially a 12 meters unconditional wall hack for the killer, which again just seems like a weird design, as it's punishing survivors from interacting with chests, which is already a waste of time, as you could be rushing generators instead. But as it is right now, this perk is going to be fun with Franklin's Demise or any of the killers that can make survivors drop their items with add-ons. This perk is also going to be a problem in low MMR, as survivors will have no idea of what this perk does. Overall, I am pretty excited about Vecna, and I feel like he is significantly better than before, going from C tier straight to A. I will be doing more testing in the meantime, but I would love to see your opinions, both as killers as well as survivors. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.